Uh, Good morning to the actual attendees at the Naval, Military and Air Force Club of South Australia and to the many virtual attendees from all over Australia. A warm welcome to you all to the Defence Reserves Association 2021 National Conference. My name is Paul Irving, and as President of the Defence Reserves Association, it is my privilege to host today's conference. With lockdowns in large parts of the country associated with the COVID-19 pandemic, we decided to conduct today's conference from Adelaide as a webinar. Just as flexibility is one of the principles of war, despite the lockdowns, we aim to replicate as far as possible you actually being in the Naval, Military and Air Force Club of South Australia, listening to some excellent speakers. In Adelaide, Brigadier Rob Atkinson, President of the South Australian branch, has just finished a welcome to country speech. I'd like to thank Rob and his committee for organising today's conference and for the formal dinner to follow. I would also like to thank our sponsors, the Australian Defence Force, Department of Defence, Novafast Holdings, Caritas Corporation, Marshall Broome and Yalumba Wines. The theme of the conference is based on the old Latin motto, "If you want peace, prepare for war," to which we have added the contingent role and task for the ADF reserves. The conference provides the opportunity to discuss what the government would demand from the ADF reserves in preparing for war, how this would be achieved by the ADF, where in terms of roles and tasks the government and the ADF might employ the reserves, and when in terms of the mobilisation process with the reserves likely to be deployed. By way of background, the 2020 Defence Strategic Update found that Australia's strategic environment was deteriorating at unexpected speed. The government declared that the ADF must become better prepared for high-intensity conflict and hostile grey zone operations. We are aware that use of the ADF reserve as a mobilisation base is not included in ADF strategic guidance. In not having a large mobilisation base, we risk ignoring the lessons of history. We're able to mount at short notice expeditionary forces that served in the Boer War, World War I, World War II and Korea, because at that time we had a large militia trained or partially trained in warfighting skills. With implementation of the total force, we have in effect turned the ADF reserves to the Navy, Army and Air Force into operational reserves. According to statistics compiled by the Lowry Institute, over the last 2 decades, Defence has had people deployed on humanitarian assistance and disaster relief tasks almost continuously, and the demand is increasing as climate change triggers more frequent and more severe natural disasters. Add the potential for massive civil disruption that could be caused by an adversary that, for example, restricts our sea line of communications and engages in a prolonged coordinated cyber attack operating in the hostile grey zone, there is a strong case to significantly increase the capacity and capability of the ADF reserves. Some defence commentators, such as Peter Layton in an article published in The Interpreter on the 4th of August, argues that the military should be restructured with a dedicated element to better tackle relief operations full time. But we know that ADF personnel employed for prolonged periods on humanitarian assistance and disaster relief tasks suffer a degradation of critical warfighting skills. And if the ADF reserves were to be increasingly used on humanitarian assistance and disaster relief tasks, then we can expect that their ability to provide an effective operational reserve to the total force will also be diminished. It is the Defence Reserves Association view that this conundrum could be addressed if the ADF reserves were to be significantly increased in terms of both the number of trained personnel and units and formations. This is the least cost option to enhance our military capability in our deteriorating strategic environment.